Okay, so today we're gonna dive into this fascinating piece from Landscape Architecture.
Hmm.
It's called Adaptation and Resistance: Vietnamese Context-Specific Responses to Climate Change.
Yeah, interesting title.
It is, and the authors are Bruner de Mulder and Kelly Shannon.
Okay.
And you know what really grabbed me about this article
Yeah.
was its kind of critical look at how we approach climate change adaptation.
Hmm.
Like we often reach for these like ready-made toolkits,
Right.
but are those always the best fit for every location?
That's exactly the point they're making.
Yeah.
Instead of just using these universal solutions,
Yeah.
we need to really consider the unique characteristics of a place,
Hmm.
like its geography, its culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
and build our design strategies from that, that local foundation.
So it's about being sensitive to context
Yep.
rather than just imposing a solution from the outside.
Yeah, it's about finding solutions that are both effective and appropriate
Right.
for that specific location.
So our goal today is to kind of tease out some of the key principles
Right.
for climate responsive design that prioritize this local context.
Mm.
So we're offering a different way of thinking,
Yeah.
moving beyond these one-size-fits-all approaches.
Which, as you said, can lead to homogenization.
Like a kind of bland uniformity in our landscapes.
Right. And we want to avoid that. We want to preserve the unique character of different places.
Definitely. So the article talks about agroecological zones. What are those exactly?
So agroecological zones, or AEZs,
Okay.
are basically ways of dividing land based on different factors,
Okay.
like climate, soil, terrain, those sorts of things.
So like a kind of mapping system.
Exactly. And the FAO and IISA,
Those are
the Food and Agriculture Organization,
great.
and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis.
Okay.
They've done a lot of work on this.
Mm-hmm.
And the article highlights how RUA,
RUA.
Research and Urbanism Practice,
Got it.
they applied this AEZ concept in the Mekong Delta Regional Plan in Vietnam.
Interesting. And what were they trying to achieve with that?
So the key idea here is that you can't just force a single agricultural model
Mm-hmm.
onto diverse landscapes. It undermines the health of the ecosystem,
Yeah.
and it makes the economy less resilient.
Makes sense.
By understanding those local variations, they could support biodiversity
Right.
and diverse economies that actually fit each specific zone.
So it's about working with the land, not against it.
Exactly.
That's really fascinating. And that perspective then kind of extends to how we interact with water in cities,
Right.
which brings us to our next point, water urbanism.
Mm.
So historically, cities were often built around water,
Yeah.
but then the focus shifted to roads and cars.
Exactly.
Now, with climate change and rising sea levels,
Right.
there's this renewed interest in water urbanism.
Yeah, we have to adapt.
Exactly. And the article talks about RUA's proposal for Ho Chi Minh City.
Highly interactive, innovative district.
It's HID.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing water as a threat, they want to make it the central element of the city.
Right. They propose these green archipelagos and water-based transportation.
I even read about a water metro.
Yeah. The WeTro.
Metro.
Okay. It's pretty innovative.
Wow. So it's about embracing the water, not just trying to control it.
Exactly.
Now, the article also mentions forest urbanism,
Mm-hmm.
which is a term I haven't heard before.
Yeah, it's not as common, but it's a really important concept.
Okay, so tell me more about it.
Basically, forest urbanism is about intentionally integrating trees and green spaces
Okay.
into the fabric of cities.
Yeah.
Not just in parks, but everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like along streets, within buildings, even as part of the infrastructure.
Wow. So it's a really holistic approach.
Yeah, exactly. And the HID proposal actually aims for at least 1 tree per person.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, but it's doable.
Yeah.
And think about the benefits: cleaner air,
Right.
carbon storage, better quality of life for everyone.
It's a completely different vision from these purely tech-driven smart cities.
Exactly. It's about using nature as a key part of the solution.
So how do people get around in these context-aware designs?
Well, that brings us to mobility shift,
Okay.
because cars has such a huge environmental impact.
Of course.
The focus here is on shifting to more sustainable transportation.
And what does that look like in practice?
Well, the Mekong Delta, for example, has this extensive network of canals.
Right.
So it makes perfect sense to reinvest in water-based transport.
Yeah, leverage what's already there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the HID proposal includes this on-demand water transport system.
The WT Pro.
Yeah. And they also propose a smart tramway system for higher elevation areas.
So it's about combining natural infrastructure with smart technology.
Exactly.
Okay, the next point is about coastal reforestation.
This is really crucial.
Yeah, because our coastlines are so vulnerable to climate change.
They are, and the article challenges this idea that we have to defend the coastline with, like, hard infrastructure.
Seawalls and things like that.
Exactly. Instead, it suggests we see the coast as a dynamic area
Okay.
where we can use reforestation, especially of mangroves and wetlands, to help protect against rising seas and storms.
So using nature as a buffer.
Right. And those ecosystems also help capture carbon.
So it's a win-win.
And there's a great example of this in action with the Tamjankau High Lagoon project.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So they're basically rethinking the coastal dune ecology and integrating those natural processes with the local culture.
So it's not just about the environment, it's about the people, too.
Exactly.
Finally, the article talks about using local and renewable materials.
That's fundamentals.
It seems like a really obvious connection to place.
It is. Yet, traditional architecture was always tied to the local environment.
Right.
And the article really emphasizes revisiting those low-tech practices.
Interesting.
And they talk about exploring innovative uses of local materials like cross-laminated timber or CLT.
DLT. No.
In Vietnam specifically. They say it can help cut down on energy use and construction costs.
Wow.
And there's some amazing contemporary Vietnamese architects
Yeah.
who are designing buildings using those local techniques.
Right. That's incredible.
They're even designing buildings that can adapt to flooding.
Wow. So for our listeners, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the key insight is that context-specific, nature-based design
Yeah.
is really a form of resistance against these generic solutions for climate change.
Like it's pushing back against that idea.
Exactly. It's about understanding the unique ecological, social, and cultural fabric of a place.
So it's about really seeing a place
Yes.
for all its complexities.
Exactly.
It reminds me of Aldo Leopold's land ethic, this idea that we have a responsibility not just to each other, but to the land itself,
Right. It's about expanding our circle of ethical consideration.
to include the whole environment.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive.
I agree.
So for our listeners out there, think about how these principles of context-specific design could apply in your own surroundings, in your own areas of interest.
Absolutely.
It's about opening our eyes to the uniqueness of place.
And designing with that in mind.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure.